We have all had painful events in our lives that can lead to depression, anxiety, addiction, or broken relationships. But here's the secret. It is not about what happened to us that causes suffering. It's the stories we believe about ourselves. Join us as we shine light on how to rewrite our stories, avoid the shadows of shame, and travel along the pathway to joy, love, and connection. It's the Finding Peace podcast with your host, Amazon best-selling author, Troy L. Love.
Hello, everybody. In this episode of the Finding Peace podcast, I wanted to follow up with the hiking trip that me and my son and his scout troop went on this past weekend. We got up a little later than we expected on Saturday morning and headed out for a 6-mile hike. About a mile and a half into the hike, 2 boys were starting to feel dizzy, and another boy, my son, was also struggling with making the trip. There was still 5 miles to go. In their mind, it was a 5-mile hike, not a 6-mile hike, but they knew that they had a long way to go. And it's Arizona, and even though we were in Prescott, it was still smoking hot. And these boys were not sure that they were going to be able to make it. So the leaders decided that rather than risk these boys feeling lightheaded and maybe overheated, we would let them go back and meet us on the other side. So 3 of the boys and 2 of the leaders left and went back the other way while the rest of us finished the trek. In my mind, I have to be honest with you and tell you, in my mind, it was like, wow, this is a lot hotter and longer than I expected. Maybe, crossing my fingers, maybe we won't have them do this hike again tomorrow. But the leaders had a little bit more foresight than I did at the time. I think I was a little heat exhausted and tired and wasn't looking forward to doing it again tomorrow, but they were rested and they wanted to go on the hike, and they also had the foresight of understanding that this was going to be good for the boys. So that afternoon, what they ended up doing is having all of the boys bring their packs, and we began to go through them. It was a learning experience for them. We had them start to look at what are the essential things that you would actually need on a backpacking hike, and what are some of the things that are not helping you on the way. One of the boys actually was carrying a cast iron skillet in his backpack that he thought would be a good idea to bring, even though nothing on his menu required a cast iron skillet. But he thought that's what he was supposed to bring. It was his cooking utensil, and so he brought it. Imagine his gratitude and joy when they said, that's not essential for your trip. You can take that out. And so each boy had an opportunity to go through his pack and take out some of the things that weren't going to help them on their trip. So in the morning, they also learned that they needed to get up a little bit earlier before the sun started to rise and get so hot. And so the boys packed on their backpacks and they were ready to go. And this time the boys finished the trip. In fact, one of the boys, a different boy, got sick, literally got sick, and so he wasn't able to finish, and so I went back with him, and so we met them on the other side, and my son was the first boy that came tracking along on the other side of the trail, and I asked him how it was, and he said it was fun, and it was great, and he was really glad that he did it, and he was proud of himself for doing something so challenging and so hard. As I thought about it, number one, I had a deep level of respect for the leaders and their willingness to be patient with these boys and give them another chance. And the lesson that I learned from that, or was reminded of, is that sometimes we need someone who believes in us and is willing to give us another chance. They don't immediately say, oh, you failed, so we're not going to do that again, or, oh, this is too hard, so you shouldn't try again. In fact, those are some of the messages that the shadows of shame tell us. The impotent one says to us, oh, this is way too hard. You're probably not going to make it. It's going to be really painful. You don't really have what it takes, so you should just give up. Or the judge that tells you that you just you were a lousy hiker, that judgmental voice inside. And so I wanted to honor and respect the leaders for their willingness to not give in to those temptations, but to help these boys really figure out that they could do it. They believed in them. And the second part of this experience was that they went through their backpacks and helped them take out some of the things that were no longer serving or weren't serving the boys on their trip. And I think about that on our own journey in life. How many of us are carrying around heavy pieces of luggage and non-essential items that are weighing us down that actually make our trip harder than it needs to be? And what a wonderful experience it was for these boys to have these things removed from their backpacks so that it wasn't as heavy as it was the first time. The analogy just stands out that we have like almost these rocks in our backpack that are weighing us down. And if we could figure out a way to take out these rocks and let them be, it would lighten our load and we would be in a much better place to be able to accomplish the trip and get to the other side. And when we get to the other side, there are people waiting for us that are celebrating with us, who are congratulating us on our journey. Like I was with my son. I was so proud of him for how hard it was. I knew how hard it was. I had done it the day before. And in fact, it was harder because his was uphill most of the way. We went the other way, which was downhill most of the way. So I know that it was incredibly hard and it was incredibly hot. And yet he did it. He was so proud of himself for the effort he put into it and his accomplishment. And to me, that's really what this life is about. We do face hills and mountains that are high and steep and hot and difficult. If we can remove some of the baggage from our backpack to make it a little bit of a lighter journey, that will be a blessing. If we realize that we're not on the trail alone, that we have a buddy system and that there are people who are urging us and celebrating with us and continuing to urge us to go forward, that's essential too. And to know that there are people who are on the other side who've made it through these hard times and are willing to celebrate with us. To me, that is part of what this Finding Peace journey is all about. I'd love to hear your comments. What are some of the things that you have removed from your backpack of your life that have been a blessing to you, that have lightened your load? Or maybe what are some of the things that you'd like to remove from your backpack but are really struggling with figuring out how to do that?
You've been listening to the Finding Peace podcast. If we added value to your life, let us know or give us a rating. Before you go, subscribe to the show and get new episodes as soon as they are published. Thank you for spending part of your journey with us. And don't forget to grab your free copy of the Amazon best-selling book, The Art of Peace, by going to www.troylove.com. Copyright Finding Peace Consulting.